I'm back. The garage is still here. My YouTube channel is kind of dead. It's been dead. I haven't been doing many videos. I think, I don't know, over time. Videos are tough for a guy that doesn't really know how to edit. Just been busy this year, you know? So I kind of put the videos on the back burner along with the Cobra. It's still sitting in the exact same spot as it was about a year ago, which is unfortunate. Doesn't mean that it's not that things aren't happening. I have a big box of parts sitting right outside the door. I've got other stuff that's been kind of floating around, so things are moving, slow but surely. And I figured I would just make a quick video focusing on another car today. So I have to do an oil change. I've put about 3,000, I think like 3,200 miles on this 996 Turbo this year. And some people go 5,000 miles on an oil change. I personally don't like to. So I've got a couple more drives coming up and some ones that will be spirited. So I want to put some fresh oil in the car. It's got an expensive motor. You got to take care of it. I didn't get to talk to you guys much about this, which is really my favorite car, to be honest with you. And I've had it for 3 years now. So the first step to doing an oil change is to get in the car, start it up and warm it up and go for a drive. So we're gonna start there and learn a little bit about 996 Turbo ownership. Before I get started, a little overview of the car. This is a car that I dreamed about for many, many years. It was, growing up, I was born in 1991. So by the time I was getting of 10 years old-ish, that's when you really start to get into cars. You can't drive yet, but you grew up playing with toy cars. You love them. What are the new ones that are coming out? For me, that was the Porsche 996. That was the new hot generation. And the 911 Turbo was always like a pinnacle car that I wanted. I obviously really liked the older ones, like 964 Turbo, all that. Still do. Still want something like that at some point. But this was the attainable dream car. So about 3 years ago, I managed to, have the means to go hunting for a 996 Turbo, and I took about a whole year to find this particular example. And I had, I wanted certain color combinations. White one was always kind of really what I wanted, and I think, there's only 1% of 996 Turbos are white, so it's kind of a hard thing to find. And then if you're familiar with, everyone complains about 996 interiors. I think if you find the right color and one with the right options, like, extended leather and the sport seats and stuff, they really are quite nice, and they're very period correct for the early 2000s. So I really went searching for that. I didn't want to get a silver on gray interior car, or a black, car with gray, or just, black interior is fine. But I wanted something a little unique and hard to find. I also, being a tuner, if you will, I always like to modify cars. When you start to dip your toes into German, somewhat exotic cars, modifying them gets a lot more expensive, right? So I grew up on that Mustang over there, where, I was cutting mufflers out and welding stuff in, and buying, cheap mods for $200-300. And when you get into cars like this, the exhausts are $6,000, and all these things are just all crazy, crazy money. So I was hoping to find something with tasteful mods that were done and of, hopefully installed by the right person, not like a garage build, but something that was, well sorted and had all of the preventative maintenance stuff done. Because I think that's where, you can get a deal on a car when you buy it, but if it needs, $20,000 of deferred maintenance, what fun is that? So I think I ended up in a pretty good spot. It's not a perfect car. It's got, it had some paint work done in the past. It's not like a pristine example, but I really wasn't looking for that. I was looking for a car that I can enjoy and really kind of make memories in, more than just kind of have a garage ornament. Because I've owned cars like that in the past that you feel like guilty driving them because they're too nice, and at the end of the day, it's not really worth it. So long-winded way to say, let's start it up and go for a drive. sounds like a diesel pickup truck, by the way. So we're just kind of getting up to temperature here, but starting to inch out. And this is my 996 turbo. This car gives me a lot of excitement still after all these years. And I would say it's not really your average 996 turbo. It's heavily modified. The engine internally is stock, but it's kind of got everything else that you would want to do with it, you know, keeping it in a safe tuning setting, right? Like I said before, I wanted something that had at least bolt-ons. I actually probably wasn't looking for a car that was as modified as this, but once I kind of got, you know, to know the car a little bit and who worked on it and how high-end some of the mods were, I was like kind of hard to pass up. So I would say that this is kind of like a poor man's GT2 in some ways. If you know what the 996 GT2 is, basically the 911 turbo variant that's more track oriented, and it's rear wheel drive, as opposed to the 911 turbos. They all come all wheel drive. Ever since the 993, they've all been all wheel drive. So the GT2 is really that kind of more, you know, highly tuned suspension, usually a little more power, rear wheel drive, no stability management or traction control. It's really just like a raw analog car. And they only imported 300 and I think 13 996 GT2s into the US. So highly sought after, collectible, but it's really the same platform, same motor. Just, you know, it looks very similar. This car looks like a GT2, so it's got the GT2 bumper and deck lid back there, but it also is rear wheel drive. So this car had the front differential removed, the gearbox was redone with GD2 RS gearing, it also has a limited slip differential put in there, and you know, it was done properly with like GT2 front spindles, so you actually got the weight savings. I think it's like 200 to 300 pounds that you free up by eliminating the front diff and drive shaft, all that stuff. So pretty cool. So that was a little bit of a selling point. I would say like some people view that as, you know, the purists view that as like devaluing the car, but you know, I didn't really care. There's that. It's got upgraded turbos, injectors, you know, fuel system. It's basically, you know, the car was running water methanol because it was a California car, and the 91 octane gas is just kind of, you know, a little, you know, obviously hit or miss if you want to have a little more safety net. So I actually detuned the car after I bought it and dialed the boost back a little bit, and it's just on a straight 93 octane pump gas tune. So other things that I've had to do, I replaced the clutch in the car. Had a very, I'm just going to call it crappy to drive, twin disc clutch before. That was really grabby and almost felt like you were like, unless you like rev the, you know, put the RPMs at like 3,000 plus, taking off was not smooth at all. It was very jittery and almost felt like you would be doing more harm than good just to the overall drive line of the car. A lot of drivetrain kind of vibration and stuff that was just unnecessary. So I kind of lucked out. I hated that clutch, but as soon as I bought the car, I wasn't like about to shell out a bunch of money on a clutch. I ended up basically after a year of ownership, the pressure plate started to basically fail in the ears on the pressure plate. I started to break them off and I basically had a clutch failure. So knock on wood, it worked out good. I was able to put a nice, you know, went back to a dual mass flywheel and a nice kind of tried and true Sachs clutch in the car, which drives like stock. It still is a heavy pedal because I have this converted to the GT2 slave cylinder setup. That's another common mod on these cars. So all things told, this is really kind of like a, you know, nice, you know, I'm going to call it reliable. For me, it's been reliable. Hopefully it stays that way. 600 plus wheel horsepower, 996 turbo. And it kind of proves that these are, you know, if you grew up loving Japanese cars, and, you know, I used to love like Supras and stuff like that, which I still do. This is kind of like the Porsche equivalent in some ways. It's like a car you can kind of turn up, has a strong motor. The Metzger engine in these is legendary. You really have to kind of be careful about high torque curves because of the rods are the real weak points. So knock on wood, I won't have any issues there because I have larger turbos that don't really come on super hard. And again, the tune isn't really aggressive right now. So maybe I'll turn the window down. We're starting to get up to temperature here. I usually like to put, you know, 20 minutes of drive time on before I get it to boost, but we'll just cruise for a bit. a really nice one, but it had cats and was like pretty quiet. I love turbo noise. I love loud stuff. And luckily in this area of the country, you can remove cats on cars that are 15 years or older, and they don't get tested for emissions. So that's a win. I don't really get inspection stickers for what it's worth, so I guess that doesn't really matter. Other things you probably notice just looking around the car as I'm cruising these back roads that I can't really do anything exciting on. You probably saw the white seats when I was getting in, the white back of the seats. I would call it just a desirable, option. Really looks good coming through the rear window. This kind of Porsche logo that you see back here, that's part of a rear seat delete / subwoofer box that is, custom made and matches the interior really nice. So that was something that was in the car when I got it, and I'm not always a big stereo guy, but having it's a nice like Alpine setup. It's not, it's probably a little bit dated by now, but so that's an overview of some of the mods. And this car has, we're just broke 39,000 miles. I bought it with about 29,000, so about 10,000 miles of enjoyment, and it's been really solid. All right, we're getting up to a little tunnel that might sound kind of cool. Can't really push it too hard. It's like a residential area, but at least you get a little bit of the acoustics. Any car guy, you hit a tunnel, you gotta hit the gas. There's no other option. We're gonna skedaddle right back under where we just came from. Perfect exhaust note. Very happy with that. This was a BBI Auto Sport kind of, I think they called it a BBI barcode exhaust. But then I kind of, did some custom cat deletes and changed the tips, which I'm not super happy with yet, but they angle so they kind of like spit the exhaust out the side of the bumper, which when you have walls next to you and stuff, it actually, changes the sound quite a bit. Made the car a lot more fun to drive and just a lot more visceral experience. So hopefully it came through good on the video. Just a sense of how good the car sounds, because it's man, it's hard not to smile listening to it. Passed 2 state troopers down here in Mexico on that short little drive, so I really didn't feel like doing any aggressive highway pulls. Not worth it sometimes, but hopefully you got a sense of how the car feels. It pulls really strong for what it is, and right now this car is making 1.3 bar of a boost, which I think is like 20 hightail it back to the garage, put it up in the air, and give you a sense of what it looks like underneath. As much fun as those highway pulls are, I really just like cruising back roads in this car. Hearing the motor, feeling the gearbox, hitting some corners, it's really fun. You hear that turbo noise, brah? Don't mind the bumpers are all brown. That's the other thing. When you have a catless turbo car and it's white, doesn't matter if it's ceramic coated or polished, you're gonna have brown bumper syndrome that you have to address every, like, I don't know, few hundred miles or whatever. It's annoying, but it is what it is. It's part of the game, baby. This is a dumb Porsche thing that I'm not the first one to do this. These little lift pucks kind of go under the car for jack points, and I just searched high and low for one of them, and I went and searched under the car, and it was still under there. I probably put it under there like 500 miles ago, and it somehow survived. Don't forget these under the car after you work on it. All right, let's look at the almighty Metzger 3.6 liter turbo. There's really not much to look at. Outside of these silicone intercooler pipes, this engine bay looks pretty much stock. The only thing, if you really kind of dip in, there's a methanol nozzle there, and then another one tucked back there. As I mentioned in the car that I used to have a methanol setup. It's actually still on the car, I just turned the controller off. So it's there if I ever want to turn the boost up, which is cool. This actually intake pipe is custom. I redid some of the diverter valve piping and vacuum lines this winter. So some of this stuff is aftermarket, but most of it's just factory. So that's that. And then if you get tucked down underneath here, so this is the kind of BBI barcode exhaust with some custom tips that need to be moved over. And again, the brown bumper. First thing you'll probably say is, holy shnikes, this motor looks dirty. This is, if you know anything about Porsches, you'll know exactly what this is. This is the factory Cosmoline coating, which is really there for corrosion prevention. They spray this on the cars before they go on container ships overseas, basically to keep them, salt air from any, early corrosion. And most people actually like it better on there. A lot of people will kind of dry ice blast these things and make them look perfect, but there's an element of originality with the Cosmoline coating that is kind of a good thing to keep. So you'll see aftermarket headers on this car. Obviously the exhaust into some XR 980 is basically so tile Zona rotor 980 turbos that are on this thing. The intercoolers are kind of hidden, you can't see them, but I've got some aftermarket intercoolers from Mark Ski Tuning, who also tuned this car. So he's a wizard on these things and has done a fantastic job. All right, so you might be asking, how much of a pain in the neck is it to maintain a 996 turbo? My answer is it's really, this car's been very, very solid. Very reliable so far. I told you already, I did the clutch myself with one of my good friends, which was a really good learning experience. Everything takes a few more steps than a regular kind of like American car from going back to like my Mustang days. But everything else is pretty straightforward, honestly. So this, what we're gonna do is drain the oil. We've got 4 spots to drain the oil from. This is a dry sump engine, so there's a separate oil tank. You gotta drain it from the crankcase first, then the oil tank, and then there's 2 resonators off of each turbo. These little square looking box there that you see. So those will hold a little bit of oil. The biggest watch out is the oil comes out of that oil tank so fast that if you are within a 10-foot radius, you might get blasted in the face with oil. And you don't want to do that when the engine's this hot. So I'm kind of letting it cool off as I lay here and chat with you. I'm gonna get set up, get some gloves, and, get moving. Brief nerd moment. When I pull the drain plug on the oil tank, I'm gonna take a sample of oil, which I like to do once a year just for the hell of it. It's like 30 bucks. This company, Blackstone Oil Analysis, no affiliation, but they will test your oil and read all of the different metal readings and levels and, viscosity, understanding like how much life was left in your oil. So that's a good thing to know how long you can go on between oil changes. But they'll also read if anything is out of whack. If there's a heavy aluminum reading or if there's any metals that look like they're heavy in the oil, something's wearing out prematurely in your engine. Sometimes I feel like those things are better off not known and just enjoy it. But for me, it gives a little peace of mind that the motor's healthy. I did it, the first year I got the car, and I've done it every year since. So good practice. All right, here's where things get interesting. So I don't know if you can see under here. So this oil tank, that drain bolt right there, this is what I was mentioning. The oil comes out literally lightning fast, straight shot to the floor, and will just end up like splashing up everywhere. So you gotta create this little cardboard oil luge is my trick of the trade in order to help kind of send the oil down at a pitch and hopefully not splash in your face. So that's what I'm gonna get set up next, where it gets fun because you might get messy. The other thing for anyone who's interested in these cars, these oil tanks are actually rather like thin, made of thin aluminum. So you don't want to just put your socket wrench on this bolt and just crank it, because you can actually damage the oil tank itself. So I basically just use an adjustable wrench to get an extra bite on this thing. Okay, just a little bit of tension. Get our luge set up. Luge is in place. And then we go get some oil out of this bad boy. Oh, shit. Shit. Mediocre oil luge. Damn it. Don't forget my little cup, little pea cup. All right, I'm officially sweating after that endeavor, but moving up to the oil filter, I got nice Motive Tools, US made. Get that in there. I don't know if you guys can actually read it, probably reverse camera angle, but nice little oil filter gadget. So it's one thing that they made very smart on these cars is a nice well-positioned oil filter housing. All right, so another kind of typical, car guy task is to analyze and inspect your oil filters. Kind of hacks this thing up, but you basically want to inspect all of the areas of your oil filter if you're a nut job like me. And pardon the camera, I'm having trouble holding this thing, but basically I inspected this, look for any, obviously dirt, but also any metal shavings more importantly, and it's clean as a whistle. So little peace of mind for your average car nerd. There's a small little O-ring that's at the end here. This little guy, I don't know if you can see there. I'm gonna yank that and always put a fresh one on. If it's right there and you change your oil, you might as well yank it and put a fresh one on. It's just an O-ring, All right, so I realize this video is getting rather lengthy now. You just saw me drain one of those reservoirs out of the turbos. I'm gonna do one more, and I'm actually gonna I put the drain bolts back in on the crankcase and on the oil tank. I'm gonna let that sit overnight because the oil still kind of pools up in there, and I wanna kind of pressurize it, drain out any excess. I learned that from the guys over at Shark Works out in California. They said that's good practice. Get like an extra, quarter to a half a quart of oil sometimes because so much just sits up in the motors and works its way down. So I'm gonna do that. Then we'll fill it up with this liquid gold Mobile 5W50. Great stuff. I'll ship my little oil analysis on, and we're ready to get back on the road. So hope you enjoyed this video. A little insight on 996 turbo ownership. More to come. I'm still learning this whole video thing, but bear with me. So appreciate you watching. Have a good one.